What's up, everybody? This is Del. Welcome to Del on Movies. And if you're watching this on the day that it is released, it will be May 4th, 2025, aka Star Wars Day. And I figured this is the perfect time to do what everybody else does on this day, and that is rank all the Star Wars movies. So I recently rewatched the whole franchise, so I'm ready to go on this. And let's go ahead and get right to it. And I'm going to start with we're only talking about the live action movies, mind you. So there are 11 of those, and number 11 for me, the worst of the group is Attack of the Clones, episode 2. I remember seeing this movie in theaters, and I hadn't watched it since then until just recently, a couple of weeks ago. And in the theaters, I hated every bit of this, right? I did not like any of it. All the meetings, all the political meetings, it was just, and all the backroom dealings that was going on. It was just, it wanted to be a political thriller in space, but it was just political and not thrilling at all. And at least that was my feeling then. And I was bored to tears. So by the time we get to the action at the end, I was just kind of through with the movie. This time around, I was kind of prepared. So I was in a better place to watch it. And I still didn't like it. But it was better than I remember. Okay. So there was more action than I remember. So I appreciated that. Um, the scenes with Yoda fighting at the end, I appreciated that more. Again, I was so through with the movie by the time that happened. When I saw it in theaters, I was just over it, and watching Yoda bounce around like a pinball was just making my head hurt. This time, I had more fun with it. And it was cool to see him, get out there and actually do some Jedi stuff. Um, Things that didn't work here for me, the performances were really, really bad. The writing of a lot of this movie was also really, really bad. And I know George Lucas is so revered, but his writing was just not good in this movie. For one, the uh, the relationship between Anakin and Queen Amidala was just so ham-fisted and just horribly, just no subtlety to it whatsoever. And he Anakin came off more like a stalker, and that leads to the other problem with Anakin's writing is that he was this full-blown psycho. And this is, after the Phantom Menace, there's a big gap in time, so it was kind of jarring to see, the kid that he was there, and then kind of happy-go-lucky kid here, and just full-on psycho now. So I thought there should have been a bridge. Maybe Anakin should have been a little bit younger in this movie, and of course that would cause problems with the love story, which is what they didn't. Um, but it just didn't work. It was a round peg in a square hole, right? It just didn't quite work. Um, the performances, like I said, were bad. Hayden Christensen, terrible as Anakin. Natalie Portman, not much better in her role. Uh, you know, it just didn't work. Ewan McGregor, I mean, he did what he did. He kind of the saving grace of the movie. Um, but yeah, so that's where I am on Attack of the Clones at number 11. This is actually the only Star Wars movie that I dislike. The rest of these movies I do like, and that might rub some people the wrong way because I know some people hate some of these, including this next one, my number 10, Solo: A Star Wars Story. Of course, this is the origin story of Han Solo and Lando Calrissian and Chewbacca, and we get, of course, other characters thrown into the mix, and I just had fun with it. Okay, it was lighthearted, even more so than other Star Wars movies, and I think that's where part of the issue is. Um, all of the Star Wars movies are popcorn flicks. Let's not, pretend, right? But there is some heft, some weight to the proceedings and the relationships that are depicted. Here, that's missing, and I think that's what a lot of people are upset about with this movie. And okay, I get it. Performances wise, like I said, I had a good time watching these guys. Donald Glover was really good. Woody Harrelson was good. Everybody was pretty solid in this movie. So I'm okay with Solo, and that's my number 10. Number 9 is the movie that brought the franchise to Disney and back in theaters after a really long absence, and that is The Force Awakens. This is the movie that kind of confused me when I've left the theater when I first saw it. Um, and maybe confused is the wrong word, but disappointed is probably a better word here. Well, let's take a look at this guy right here on the top, right? We got Kylo Ren, who's introduced as our new villain. He's our new baddie for the Disney Star Wars movies. And when we're introduced to him, he's this, he's in one of the does some of the greatest things right off the bat. He catches the laser in mid-air, he's using the Force, and he just stops the laser in mid-air, and he's this badass right at the beginning, just going running rush out over people. So it's an amazing introduction, and the first half of the movie was an amazing time. Just really get into these new characters, of course, with Ray and Finn, and the story was engrossing. And then the second half of the movie happened, well, Kylo turns into this whiny little brat, who whines, sniveling, and all that kind of thing. And the movie as a whole decided to just give up and be a remake of the first Star Wars. And all in the name, I guess, of nostalgia and familiarity, kind of giving people what they know, even though they claim they want something new. Um, and I was like, that was a disappointment to me. I wanted them to continue down the path of the first movie of the first half of the movie and kind of do their own thing from there on. But they just reverted to tried and true, let's blow up the Death Star again. Okay. And I was disappointed by that. Overall, though, there were lots of fun scenes in the movie, and it was cool to see, of course, uh, Harrison Ford back as Han Solo and Carrie Fisher back as Princess Leia. Just didn't work as a whole for me because of that. Like I said, I didn't hate the movie, so I did like the movie. It just fell short of what I thought it could have been. Uh, Moving up to number 8 is a movie that also brought us back to theaters, brought the franchise back to theaters after a long absence. And this one is The Phantom Menace. So this movie I like actually quite a bit better than Force Awakens. So there's a pretty good gap between the two spots. And just a quick note here, I'm not much of a double dipper, but I was upgrading from DVD when I only had this on DVD and it was on sale one day. So I grabbed that. And then later on, weeks later, uh, maybe even months, came across this at a thrift store for $1. And I was not going to pass up a $1 Star Wars Steelbook. So I grabbed it. And here we are. But anyway, as for the movie, I really enjoyed this movie. First off, right off the bat, it's got two of my favorite scenes in all of Star Wars. The pod racing, I that kind of gets me going, and then the lightsaber duel between Darth Maul, Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan, and just fantastic the way that whole fight played out until, of course, the very end when we got rid of Darth. But anyway, those two scenes carry the day for me, and I really, really enjoy the movie because of that. I also don't get the hatred for the young boy who played Anakin. I'm not sure what people were expecting. I know a lot of people, oh, he's this annoying shit kid or whatever they say. I didn't get that. He was a kid. He was fine. He was as fine as most actors, most child actors. Um, so I was okay with all of that. So that's where the Phantom Menace is not at the bottom for me like it is for a lot of people. So that's at number 8. Number 7 is the, this movie here. Now we get into those another polarizing Disney movie, and that is the Rise of Skywalker, the last of those movies. Um, at least until the next one comes out. From what I understand, there is another one coming. So one of the problems with the Disney franchises, the biggest problem to me is how reactionary they were in filming everything. So, well, I shouldn't even say that that's the biggest problem, because the biggest problem was there was no plan to begin with. There didn't seem to be a clear plan on what the story was going to be. They just did the first movie and said, okay, we'll go from there, and that led them to be reactionary, and we wind up with this movie. Again, I don't think it's as bad as other people, but uh, the pieces don't always line up the way they should have, and they left a lot of cards on the table. Um, for instance, the reactionary part really, it comes down to, fan fans saw The Force Awakens, fans saw The Last Jedi, and after both of those movies, there was all of this dialogue online about how terrible things were on Star Wars, and they should do this and they should do that. We don't like this and we don't want that. And Disney and the powers that be, everybody they put on these movies, got caught in trying to appease everybody when you already have the product that can do that if you just make a good product. And like you said, I like the movie, but I understand that there are lots of issues. Mainly the handling of Finn and Rose. Um, both were subjected, both actors who played these roles were subjected to just all sorts of hatred online, simply for the fact that they deigned to be main characters in Star Wars and not white males, or not white, period. And it's really left a sour taste in my mouth. And so I don't necessarily think that Disney was themselves racist, and I fully understand Disney's history. Um, but I think they got caught up trying to please the wrong people, or trying to please too many people. And then story beats along the way also changed, and from what they should have been. And finally, the last blow to this is that they the series never commits to fully to having Kylo Ren be 100% evil in a way that we accept. Okay, he's evil for a bit, and then he wants to be good, right? It's that kind of thing all the way, and it just it was too much. So that's why it lands here, and I realize that I'm sounding really down on the movie, but I actually did enjoy it. Again, the Star Wars action was excellent in this movie for the most part. So I really did. I really actually do like the movie. Number six is the first movie, or the lowest rated movie for me, I should say, of the original trilogy, and that one is Return of the Jedi. And let me say this. By the way, same situation. Um, I found this for $1. It might have been $2 for this one. Again, at a thrift store. Wasn't going to pass that up. This is a DVD that I'm definitely, absolutely, positively keeping. This one contains the original theatrical cut of Return of the Jedi. I have never seen the special edition, or the updated edition with additional footage and all that. Um, Even though I've had this for years, it has the on here, and of course that's on here, the Blu-ray, but I've never watched it. I've only watched the theatrical cut. And this movie, while it's not as high in my rankings as a lot of people have it, I know some people who just have the original trilogy, one, two, three. Um, it's also better. Another movie that's better than I remembered. This I have seen probably five, six times over the years. Um, I think people are overblowing the Ewoks thing, which is what does drag it down for people who don't appreciate it. Yes, they're there, they're furry, they're cute, and yes, it gets kind of silly and campy with them at times. But the rest of the movie, though, is so good that uh, it overshadows that. And of course, the closing of the Darth Vader story is what really pulls things all together. Him and his relationship with Luke in particular. A little odd. I've always found it that there's no relationship with Leia shown ever, other than he knows who she is. And they don't interact much in the franchise at all. Um, but yeah, I definitely appreciate the rest of the story of this, and the way it ended was pretty perfect way to end the original trilogy. We we weren't sure back then that we were ever going to get another Star Wars movie. Um, there were stories, there were rumors that George Lucas had all these stories ready to go, but we weren't sure that we were ever going to get one. And sitting in the theater watching that one at the end, Vader finally takes off the helmet. He wants to release that. I want to look at you with my own eyes. I'm paraphrasing, quoting, and it was a big moment for the franchise. And I really appreciate the movie, but still, in all, it is a bit weaker than the others. Yes, I just said the Ewoks were overblown, but they're there, and so that campiness and that part of it does drag it down a bit. Number six for Return of the Jedi. Number five for me is the last movie of the prequel trilogy, Revenge of the Sith. This movie easier to swallow after Attack of the Clones for a number of reasons. It came after Attack of the Clones in release order, and first, it is a lot more action in this movie. This movie's pretty action packed. But the bigger reason I really suspect is that we already know that Anakin's a psycho. Okay, Attack of the Clones prepared us for that very well. We know that he is completely off his rocker. And so when he gets up to doing the diabolical things he does, it fits better for us. Um, so that automatically makes the movie better. Of course, Hayden Christensen's performance is better, not a ton better. I mean, but he's fine. Okay, he's fine. He's not one of the worst actors ever, as it appeared to be after Attack of the Clones. Um, I personally, I think George Lucas has an issue directing actors anyway, but that's a whole nother story. It's just the style that he has with them. But yeah, a lot better movie than the other two movies in the prequel trilogy. And if there was one gripe that I really had with this movie, is I would have ended it differently. And by end, I mean the things that happened would have happened, but I would have done them differently, if only for to end on what I think would really have made it a more iconic shot than it is, and it is, but it should be more. And if you've seen the movie I'm talking about, near the end of the movie, we've as he's finally becoming Darth Vader, we see the mask lowered onto his face, and there's a shot uh, of him lying sideways. There's a shot of him in the Vader mask for the very first time. I think I'm gonna put it up on the screen, because I can show you better than I can tell you. And I would have ended the movie there. Now, some things that happened after that, I probably would have just moved them to before that. And the one thing, of course, I would have taken out was the whole no, that whole thing. That was stupid. Anyway, let's move on. And number four for me is a movie that maybe the most polarizing movie in the franchise, and that is The Last Jedi. I really liked this movie, borderline loved this movie. I had so much fun with this movie, and I felt that way when I saw it in theaters, and it was very. And you know what? Going just popped into my head, going back to the Revenge of the Sith for a minute. That's the only Star Wars movie that I did not see in theaters, and it was because I hated Attack of the Clones so much. So let's get back to it. Anyway, Last Jedi. I really, 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 really enjoyed The Last Jedi, and Ray is cool. Ray's a cool character. There were some issues with her, mainly being that she doesn't always seem to have earned her abilities, right? In superhero movies and with Jedi's, with Luke, we always felt that their powers were earned somehow, right? With Ray, it just kind of seems to come out of nowhere. We get that the Force is strong within that one, but even with Luke, there was still a learning curve that she didn't deal with as much as Luke did, and that's what kind of left people a sour taste in people's mouth. And of course, again, that might be part of the overreaction, the overcompensation thing uh, when dealing with the fandom, because they were upset that she was a woman who was not a male in the lead role of the Star Wars movie. And so they just kind of tried to make her an extra badass, and as much as possible. And that for me, it was okay. That was probably the weakest thing, but even then, she did some really cool things in this movie. The biggest thing for me here though was Mr. Mark Hamill back as Luke, and to be honest, this Luke was more Mark Hamill than Luke. And if you ever follow, if you have followed Mark Hamill on social media, you'll understand. Um, but he was so cool, and it was a much cooler character than in original uh, uh, the original trilogy. Yeah, everybody loves that character. It's an iconic character, but this version of Luke was so much cooler to me. That version, a lot of G Willikers and 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 he wasn't as good an actor as he is now, so he couldn't pull off everything that he needed to. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to those movies. The action scenes were intense. Uh, Again, this is where we start to see Finn's sideline, and we talk about those things in for the Rise of Skywalker, and we're introduced to Rose, and I liked her character. I really did. I wanted more of her in the Rise of Skywalker. Didn't get her, but I thought she was pretty good here. She was a nice addition to the franchise. And then of course, just like again, the action, some of the best in the franchise happens in The Last Jedi. So it's pretty high up for me. My number four. My number three is a movie I debated seeing. I debated having this as my number two. And to be quite honest, if I had just started watching the franchise for the first time, it probably would be my number two. But I can't quite make that step. But I'm talking about a fantastic movie, Rogue One, another Star Wars story, the other one off that we got. And it plays as a direct prequel to the very first Star Wars movie. And it is pretty amazing. Everybody that's shown up here is outstanding. Which one, and be honest, for a Star Wars movie, the acting is not always the best, and a lot of that had to do with George Lucas. George Lucas, of course, not involved in the filming of this movie, and I think it showed up most in the acting. And the writing of this movie worked really well. They didn't just lean on, okay, yes, it's a prequel to A New Hope, but they gave us a story where we still felt the stakes. We did things that were different. It wasn't full tilt. Let's go right to that movie. That we had a main character who who we felt for. We wanted we wanted her to succeed. We wanted her to to accomplish the things that she wanted to accomplish and get away and all those kind of things. And it really made the finale of the movie, the end of the movie, engaging, and I really appreciated it. Just every part of this movie, and of course, we also get Darth Vader's most iconic scene. Well, one of his most iconic scenes, not his most iconic scene, but for me, his most iconic battle scene. He just comes into that corridor with all the and just starts slaughtering, you know, rebels right there. It was like, whoa, this is Darth Vader. Um, but yeah, Rogue one of my favorites. Would have had it at number two, but the nostalgia for this next movie is so strong. Uh, you just can't beat it, and it set up the entire franchise. And of course, that's Star Wars. Yeah, I just said Star Wars. I didn't say this goofy title here. New Hope. I didn't say that. No. I said Star Wars. So that's what it was when I went to the theaters to see it way back when I was 7, 8 years old. Um, just for you youngsters, let me give you a little bit of a not necessarily a history lesson, but kind of the way things were. This movie came out in 1977 when it came out. And by the way, I'm just waving them all over the place, distracting you. But anyway, same deal as the other movie. This has the theatrical release on it, and that is the one I've only watched. I've never seen the new editions. Um, this one does have that on there. Both this one does have this that has that on there also, but I don't think so. I one day I'm going to watch because I have them here, and just to see what the big deal is. Sorry for all the glare that's coming back there, but anyway, this movie came out in 1977. I don't know. I know I saw it in the theaters, but I don't know that I saw it in 1977. And I know that sounds crazy to youngsters where you're coming up in a time now where movies, they hit the theaters and 2, 3 weeks later, you can't find them anywhere. They're gone. Um, a long run for a movie nowadays is a couple of months. Well, back then, a movie would come out, it may stay in the theaters, first run theaters for 6 months to a year, and then go in second run theaters, and then be brought back another year or two later. It's because there wasn't all these streaming services and cable and all these other kinds of things. So I saw the movie. I don't know for sure it was 1977. Might have been 78, or 79, but probably 78. Um, but that's neither here nor there. The reason why, and when I saw it though, it is again, it started it all, right? And we're introduced to these characters. We're introduced to Luke and Leia and Han and Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi and all C3PO and R2D2. We're introduced to all these characters, and we get to know all these characters. And if you're watching it now for the first time, or recently for the first time, one of the things that people might say is that it's slow, especially the first half of the movie. It's slow. And I get it, I understand it, but it goes so far in developing these characters and setting up the entire franchise. And that's why people love these characters. We have an affinity for them almost as real people because they're set up so well here, and then of course we follow them through the next couple of movies. Um, it's pretty hard for me to be overly critical of this movie, to be really critical of this movie at all. I everything you can say, I can throw something out just like I did for it being slow. Um, but just the way things were set up was magnificent. Special effects, yes, some of them are a little bit wonky now, but most of them hold up really well. If you're watching the theatrical version, because it's all practically done, and occasionally you look at some of the things where they use miniatures and you can tell, but it's a 50-year-old, almost 50-year-old movie. You can definitely it definitely has held up pretty well, stood the test of time. Of course, the last few scenes are iconic, and I close my eyes because in my head I'm telling myself use the Force, Luke, and and all that stuff is just amazing. If there are some other drawbacks to the movie, I will say, as I said earlier, Mark Hamill is not the best actor for maybe well, he was the best actor for the role because he became one with the role. He was not the best actor at that point. Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher did a lot of the heavy lifting in that department. And of course, James Earl Jones as the voice of Darth Vader also did a lot of that lifting. Um, and then the other thing would be the the lightsaber fights in this movie are very rudimentary, and again, that's a function of when the movie was made, 77. And I will give that to the Disney franchise over the OG franchise every day. Or even the prequel franchise has it over this trilogy, and that is the lightsaber duels. The lightsaber duels there in those other movies. It's fantastic, skilled swordsmen, swordswomen also, and they're going at it. Things are fast, and it's not necessarily realistic, but it looks cool to see lightsabers just swirling and all that kind of stuff, right? Whereas in this movie, it's a lot of and stop and one or two blows, and then you wait again, and so it's a lot of that. So the fights aren't as intense, and then the way Obi-Wan meets his fate, it in retrospect, it's kind of goofy. Um, it could have been done. It could have been handled differently. And I get it. It was a sacrifice and all that, but just the way it played out looked a little bit goofy. Um, but yeah, love this movie. Have loved this movie for almost 50 years. So Star Wars gets my number two spot. And of course, that leaves in the number one spot the movie that expanded on everything that movie did and made it even better. The Empire Strikes Back. And once again, theatrical version here is all I've watched. If you've watched the version that George Lucas put out later with additional footage or additional special effects added into the movie, let me know how it looks in the comments, because the clips I've seen of it, look awful. And of course, going back to the last movie, Han shot first. Some of his editing choices or some of his choices to change things just don't feel true to the character in that situation anyway. But bringing it back to what I love about this movie, though, again, like I said, it expanded on everything in the first movie from the first movie. And yes, I just called The Empire Strikes Back, not episode 5 or anything like that. Um, Same situation if you're wondering why I'm holding two of them. I've had this forever, found this for $1 or $2. And here, this was one of those movies where I was first introduced to the idea that the good guy doesn't always win. And that is not the most iconic part of the movie, but it's the part of the movie that's probably with me more often than anything else. Uh, so, I'm at a place now in my movie watching where if I'm watching a movie, there are times when the bad guy should win. Okay. Just based on the story and based on the happenings. Not that I'm rooting for the bad guys. Sometimes I do, but not that I'm necessarily rooting for the bad guys. It's just that the way things are playing out, it makes sense that the bad guy wins. And a lot of times, screenwriters and directors and just filmmakers bend themselves into pretzels to make it the good guy win. So this was, and when you're 8, 9, actually, I did see this in theaters in 1980. When you're 9, that never occurs to you, right? You don't think that the villain could win. They could never come out on top, and especially in a self-contained thing like a movie. And at that age, and in 1980, the world wasn't overrun with sequels, so I wasn't thinking about the setup for the next movie. I just, after I left theater, figured that okay, maybe there's another one coming. Um, but that has always stuck with me. So yeah, the Empire actually gets to gets the better of the rebels in this movie. Then the other thing that stuck with me, of course, is the iconic. you know, reveal, just being a kid and being in the theater and getting that for the experience for the first time was pretty amazing. It's something I fear that it can't happen anymore. Not because there aren't twisted movies. There's lots of twisted movies. It's just that they're given away before you ever get into the theaters now. With leaks, studio leaks and set leaks and just actors talking about it when they shouldn't be, and then you get these trailers that tell everything, and then you get social media, people on social media who spoil it just because they saw it before you did. So it's really really hard to have that kind of experience now. So I appreciate that I did. Um, the other thing, of course, now we're going back to those lightsaber fights, and I talked about how slow they were in the last move in when I was talking about Star Wars. And the same is true here for the most part, but there's there's real weight to them, right? When Luke and Vader are squaring off, we really feel tension. We really feel Vader's intent, and we really feel Luke's anger. So when Luke is told by Vader how his anger is going to lead to the dark side, I'm sorry, when tells Luke that his anger, leads to the dark side. It really felt like something heavy was being dropped on us. Um, so and that's something that a lot of the movies are missing. So I really appreciated it with this one. And the other thing was just the relationships with the characters between themselves. You got Han and Leia, their romance budding, though it was a little weird because the first movie they were kind of setting up this triangle with Luke and with Luke and Leia and Han, and then only to say, "Oh, Luke is her brother now." So yeah, I don't think that was always in the plans that they were siblings. Um, but there was real weight to their relationship, and of course, you get the iconic "I love you, I know." We get that whole thing, and we get the introduction of Lando Calrissian. We get the freezing of Han Solo. We get all these iconic things that just happened in this movie. I can go on about this movie for days. My favorite movie in the franchise. Um, yeah, that is just is plain and simple. Uh, the best Star Wars movie, one of my favorite movies of all time, period, of any genre. Just to Before I get out of here, guys, I'm looking because I got a couple of other odd things that I found, and I'm not a huge memorabilia guy. Yeah, if I pull the camera back some or tilt it up, there's some superhero stuff up there, and there's some horror stuff. I got the Scream mask is back in the corner over off to that side. Um, but I'm not a guy who goes out and buys. I don't have the statues and the buttons from years ago and the toys and all that stuff. But if I find something cheap and I come across it, it's cool. I'll pick it up. And one of those things is Darth Vader. This is a pen. It's the oddest pen design I think I've ever seen. Because yeah, it's shaped like Darth Vader, sorta. And back like that. And but then the bottom is just the point sticking out. There was no cap to it. At least not when I found it. I think I found this in a pawn shop. No, it was a thrift store, like a Goodwill or something. I just happened to walk by it, and I don't even remember what I paid for it. I know it wasn't more than $1. Um, so yeah, whatever. The other thing I picked up also for $1, and this was years later because I got that. I've had this pen maybe 10, 15 years. This I've had maybe a year, and this is a spatula with Princess Leia all over it, spread or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, found this for $1. It's never been used. It just, at least not by me. It just sits back here in front of all my Star Wars stuff with the pen. And yeah, that's all I have for that stuff, guys. Let me know in the comments how you rank the Star Wars movies because everybody has different rankings, and I know where, for me, some of the ones I have near the top, you might have near the bottom. So I'm very, very curious about how you rank all the Star Wars movies. And yeah, may the force be with you. Catch you on the next one, guys. Bye.